evening, everyone. It is April 9th, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. And just ask that you bow your heads in a moment of silence. And ask you to stand for the pledge.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving right along to minutes. Can I get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. On to resolutions, awards, and presentation. Commissioner Pritchett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Kane? This one is for Earth Day. And ma'am, I'll read the resolution, and if you'd like to make some comments, we would love to hear from you tonight. And thank you for all you do with reminding us about how important it is to take care of our world.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Whereas the Brevard County Board of Commissioners recognizes that Earth Day is intended to inspire awareness and appreciation for the Earth's natural environment and reaffirm our commitment to leave a clean, healthy Earth for our children and grandchildren. And whereas the theme for Earth Day 2019 is Protect Our Species, and whereas all species play a unique role in the web of life, making protecting all species crucial to the survival of this planet and inhabitants, whereas many animal populations in the wild have declined by up to half, and the plants and animals who live side by side with us are facing the same fate, calling for us to rethink our moral obligation and examine the ecological impacts of our lives on biodiversity and the very future of our planet. And now therefore be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners does hereby proclaim Earth Day, April 22, 2019. Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I'd like to thank you for the county's support of Earth Day again this year, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to address you. Municipalities all across the county are engaging in activities to celebrate Earth Day, as are families and organizations. It's important for them all to know that the county recognizes the significance of Earth Day and encourages them to participate. Brevard County has many environmental organizations who are working to protect the environment in general, and the Indian River Lagoon in particular. Your recognition of their work is important, not only to them, but to the future of this county. These organizations are staffed with volunteers who dedicate their time and energy to the environment and never expect anything in return. I like to think that all of us have the same goal, but just different ways of getting there. Members of our communities look to the county for leadership. I believe that it's very important for all of the residents of Brevard County to know that as our governing body, you are supportive of Earth Day, its programs, and its intent. We have this one planet which we call home. We all need to come to the realization that we have to do a better job of working together and protecting it. We can't continue to use the oceans as our trash cans and destroy the air that we breathe. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And item 2 is moved to new business. So item 3, Commissioner Pritchett.
Thank you, ma'am. Do we have somebody here representing the public safety telecommunicators?
Several somebody's.
Yeah.
Even Junie.
All right, I'm going to read your resolution, and then we would love to hear from you tonight. And thank you for all y'all do. Thank you so much. Whereas the Board of Brevard County Commissioners has determined that public safety telecommunicators are an integral part of the emergency response process nationwide, and whereas the Brevard County Sheriff's Office, Brevard County Fire Rescue, Cocoa Beach Police Department, Indialantic Police Department, Indian Harbor Beach Police Department, Melbourne Police Department, Palm Bay Police Department, Rockledge Police Department, Satellite Beach Police Department, and Titusville Police Department are designated as public safety answering points under the Florida Enhanced 911 Plan in Brevard County. And these agencies employ over 200 individuals as public safety telecommunicators. And whereas the National Emergency Number Association and the Association of Public Safety Communications Officials recognize the week of April 14 through 20, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week to acknowledge the individuals employed in the public safety telecommunications field. And whereas the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County desires to recognize the dedication and professionalism of the public safety telecommunicators in Brevard County, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, does hereby declare the week of April 14 through 20, 2019 as National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for supporting us. Thank you to all the commissioners. My name is Debbie Sands. I am Brevard County's 911 Systems Manager. I am blessed with being able to support all of our telecommunicators with our 911 technology. Our public safety telecommunicators answer over 355,000 911 calls for assistance and over 400 text messages just since July of 2018 when we went live. Their professionalism, commitment, and dedication are what we honor during National Public Safety Telecommunicator Week. These men and women deserve to be celebrated for the service they provide to our community and the field personnel of the agencies that they dispatch. They deserve to be recognized for their sacrifices they make, working nights, holidays, weekends with little to no sleep. They deserve recognition for their resiliency. They deserve recognition for their birthday, holiday, games, dinners, and family gatherings that they miss through the years to be there for strangers during their most difficult times. They are lifelines to those in their most critical moments. They deserve to be lifted up for all the lives that they have saved on the phone as well as the radio. The calm, reassuring voice needed to get them through their crisis. You are truly the unsung heroes, and we celebrate you. Thank you for your dedication to the public safety.
Who wants us all to go down?
Madam Chair, if, there's not much that I can say to add to that other than the men and women you see represented here are only a small percentage of those that are every day, every night, making sure that our citizens are safe. They are the first line of defense for our citizens, and I can tell you they're the first line of defense for our firefighters, for our rescue team, for our law enforcement officers. From the time they dispatch the law enforcement call or the fire rescue call to the very time that it ends and they know that everybody is safe, they are on pins and needles because they are truly the life support system of our first responders. And to have you recognize them tonight, I know not only means the world to them, but it means the world to us because we realize just how valuable they are to our community and how special they are to all of our agencies. So thank you for recognizing them tonight. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. All got to get in tight. All hide moves.
Sit. Okay. Sit three, right? One, 2, 3.
Oh, thank you, guys.
That's the question. We'll roll into tomorrow.
Where's Greg at? Hey, Greg. Greg Purden. Come here. Madam Chair, can I take one just a second? I know we have a long agenda. I'd just like to share with everybody that this Thursday will be the retirement date for Commander Greg Purden, who has spent 31 years representing our agency and protecting our citizens. He is retiring from the Sheriff's Office, but he is carrying his knowledge, his amazing skill set, and his desire to serve to North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, where he is now going to be the Chief of Police for North Myrtle Beach.
Wow.
So just ask everybody to give him a big round of applause. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith?
Mary Ann, Lillian, and anybody else that wants to come up? Sure, come up. All right, let me read this and I'll give you guys the mic. Whereas, Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard County, Florida, Inc. is an organization whose mission is to improve the lives of abused, abandoned, and neglected children living in relative care families by providing advocacy, training, and support. And whereas, currently over 8,700 children are living in the care of relatives in Brevard County alone. Whereas, Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard's goal is to ensure permanent placement with relatives in lieu of foster care, address special needs of children being raised by relatives, advocate for these relatives, and raise awareness of their needs. And whereas, the organization provides cost-free, community-based programs and services for any relative caregiver that include weekly therapeutic support groups, crisis counseling, workshops, and educational programs, community outreach and education, recreational activities, advocacy for the rights and concerns of caregivers, and whereas Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard's hope is that one day all children will live in a safe, loving home with relatives that will help them to develop into their full potential, because living in a place you can call home and knowing that someone will always be there for you is something everyone needs, especially children. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, do hereby honor and celebrate the 25th anniversary of Grandparents Raising Grandchildren of Brevard for their devoted efforts, contributions, and accomplishments to their grandchildren and their community. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 9th day of April 2019. Madam Chair, I propose that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
You don't know how much we appreciate this honor and recognition, and all I can say is thank you, because you covered what we do, but it does give us recognition in the community that 1 in every 10 kids in the school system is being raised by a grandparent, and that lets the community know that we are there to help, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Want to speak?
All righty. This one is me, Abby Johnson. There you are. I'm going to read the resolution. If you could just say a few words when we're done. Okay. This is a resolution proclaiming April as Water Conservation Month. Whereas water is a basic and essential need of every living creature, and whereas the state of Florida, St. John's Water Management District, and Brevard County are working together to increase awareness about the importance of water conservation, and whereas the state of Florida has designated April, typically a dry month when water demands are most acute, as Florida's Water Conservation Month, to educate citizens about how they can help save Florida's precious water resources, and whereas Brevard County has always encouraged and supported water conservation through various educational programs and special events, and whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can make a difference when it comes to conserving water, and whereas every business, industry, school, and citizen can help by saving water and thus promote a healthy economy and community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida does hereby proclaim the month of April as Water Conservation Month and calls upon each citizen and business to help protect our precious resource by practicing water-saving measures and becoming more aware of the need to save water. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 9th day of April, AD 2019.
Make a motion to approve.
Can I get a motion by Commissioner Pritchett, second by Commissioner Lober? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Abby.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. Thank you very much for passing this approving the proclamation. We appreciate your continued support. We are ecstatic to have you all as continual partners on this and a variety of other projects throughout the county. We'd love to thank you for leading by example and encouraging all residents and businesses to conserve water. We like to say at the district, every drop counts, and we can all do a little bit more. So, if you have not already, take the time to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I believe Pinterest and YouTube. So every day we post new tips of ways to conserve water. So whether it's the right plant, the right place, or adjusting your irrigation schedule, we can all take the time to see how we can conserve water for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
While they're doing the photo, I just want to add that Abby is one of my go-to dihydrogen monoxide people.
Okay.
What is the agency name?
St. John's.
St. John's River Water Management District.
All right. We have Commissioner Lober.
All right, if we can get Mr. Watkins to come up. I had a guess with all the regalia and flair there that I was spot on with.
These are
with which
some of
one
my
here.
favorite ones to do, because I know how much hard work goes into doing what you do, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. All right, so let me start here. So whereas Colin Bradley Watkins, a resident of Merritt Island, joined scouting as a Cub Scout in August 2007 and has been a member of the Challenger District Troop 343 chartered with Merritt Island Presbyterian Church for the past 9 years. And whereas in pursuit of his Eagle Scout designation, Colin has earned 30 merit badges. Wow. That's quite a few. And has served his troop in several leadership capacities, including senior patrol leader and assistant senior patrol leader. And whereas Colin has demonstrated commitment to Boy Scout values and his community by participating in scouting for food drives, assisting others with their Eagle service projects, logging over 100 hours of community service since entering high school. And whereas Colin's Eagle Scout service project consisted of designing, seeking material donations, and supervising the ground improvements for the exercise stations at the Brevard County Rotary Park in Merritt Island, completed on February 11th, 2017. And whereas after the successful completion of his Eagle Scout service project and Board of Review, Colin achieved the rank of Eagle Scout on April 25th, 2018. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida does hereby unanimously recognize and commend Colin Bradley Watkins for attaining the rank of Eagle Scout and offers congratulations and best wishes for a successful future. Move to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, just thank you guys for showing your support for the organization that I was in. Thank you for recognizing me and the Boy Scouts. It's a wonderful organization, and I'm proud to be a part of it. It taught me a lot about myself and taught me a lot about just, my future ahead of me, and it shaped who I was. I learned I learned a lot about responsibility and discipline and just the life skills that I need to, do well in my future. So,
Out of curiosity, is that a dolphin or is that a fish that's about just below halfway down with the orange top and the kind of teal base? Right there.
I think it's a fish.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Megan Lee and Anita and Tom and anyone else that wants to come up.
You guys didn't bring them this time.
The tortoises?
Yeah.
What, no tortoise? Oh, that was the highlight of the evening. You can stand up here. Let me read this. Whereas, Gopher Tortoise Day will be observed annually in Brevard County, Florida on April 10th. Whereas the gopher tortoise has been living on the earth for 500,000 to 2 million years, if anybody's counting. Whereas the gopher tortoise today is, in the state of Florida, listed as threatened, and in parts of the U.S. is federally listed as threatened. And whereas the gopher tortoise is considered a keystone species, and whereas the gopher tortoise's burrow protects more than 350 other commensal species, some of which are also listed as threatened. And I thought my house was crowded. Whereas the gopher tortoise's habitat needs protection, and whereas having gopher tortoises and other species in Brevard County helps to sustain our area's ecology and provide people with a source of joy and appreciation for nature. Now therefore be it resolved that the Brevard County Board of County Commissioners do hereby declare April 10th as Gopher Tortoise Day in Brevard County, and urge all citizens to help protect this species through education and awareness. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 9th day of April 2019. Madam Chair, I recommend that we approve this resolution.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Smith, second by Commissioner Lober. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Good evening. My name is Megan Lee, and I'm on the board for 100 Acre Hollows. Our mission is to protect wildlife, restore the habitat, and engage the public. We appreciate the support from the Brevard County Commissioners by granting this resolution, and thank you for your continued efforts in promoting education and awareness of gopher tortoises. Thank you.
Thank you.
Want to say anything? Tom, you want to say anything?
As president of 100 Acre Hollows Incorporated, would like to say thank you on our behalf as well. Sunday was the ribbon cutting for our new facility, new garden out there. And appreciate Christine being out there with us. It turned out wonderfully. Virginia Barker, is she here today? Virginia Barker and Megan were the ones with the scissors that just chomped right through that ribbon. And we did our own little proclamation. So thank you for your support in preserving and protecting the wildlife and the habitat here.
These two are getting moved, and they're not controversial. Because certainly he waited at the last meeting to file that early. Yeah, him moved. Sure. All the others wanted, they wanted to observe it, so they're waiting. And then we just can't get rid of it.
I don't know if they're here yet. Do we have Dr. Jenna McCarthy here? No, not yet. Okay, so we'll just postpone.
Do you want to read it later? Just remind me, okay?
I will.
All right, so we're going to read that one later. Okay, moving on to consent. Does anybody want anything pulled off of consent?
No, ma'am, I'm
Where's
good.
Commissioner Lober?
You good with consent?
We wait for Lober? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion to
Approve.
approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Pritchett. Second by Commissioner Tobias. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 4-0.
I was going to say move forward. Yeah.
Okay. Public comments? Mr. Charles Tovey?
Charles Tovey, 2555 Roberts Road, Melbourne, Florida. I want to apologize for the comment I made to Commissioner Smith. I shouldn't be, and I apologize. But sometimes I put people to sleep because I talk so much, and I take power naps. But I want to let anybody and everybody who's concerned with the lagoon that I am almost halfway through with what I do with the lagoon, and just to let you know, and by May there should be continual improvements, and no one else is doing it, and when I go back it's the same way, so apparently no one cares about the things I have to share. But one person, a student that knows what I do, she expressed this as a gift, out of gratitude for what I do. Also, I wanted to, since Mr. Lober's not here, Commissioner Lober, there's a beautiful aquarium at Caesar's Palace. It's one of the best I've ever seen. I want to see if anybody has taken consideration of the use of atrazine 2,4-D or glycophosphate as being part of the problem with our lagoon and seagrasses. And we're concerned about the septics and the nutrients of fertilizer, but these other chemicals being poured and used without any kind of regulations or observance, and it's just being, nobody likes to pull weeds, so they go out and they spray these chemicals, and they're carcinogenic as well as other things. Well, I'm going to keep it short and brief because I have my personal issues that I'm still discontent with, and I'll express them maybe at the next meeting, and I appreciate your time, but I'm almost halfway done, and if I don't get harassed by the Sheriff's Department or any other, I'll be in your district and Commissioner Pritchett's district soon. I did the South area, and I was harassed every day by Brevard County Sheriff's Office, South Precinct, and Melbourne Police, and Indian Harbor Police. They called me across the road, give me a ticket for jaywalking, and almost pit me on New Year's Eve, and I get a ticket for failing to recognize an emergency vehicle or somewhat. But meanwhile, the guy's burning down my house and destroying everything I have, and that's all fine and good, but code enforcement, yes, I have discontentment about all these things that I've experienced, and we're just going to put it away under the carpet and nobody knows nothing. No. I have video that I tried to show Sheriff Ivey, Sheriff Parker, all of them. I have video, I have witnesses, I have physical evidence. I'll let it go at that. Have a nice Easter. God bless everybody and be safe.
Chet Ellsworth?
Chet Ellsworth, 989 North Highway 1A, number 2, in Dealantic, Florida. Been a resident for 20 years, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I am here tonight to comment on the CARE open letter to all commissioners from March 27, 2019, where there are comments in that we're asking you folks to refuse giving the government complex as a venue for events, certain events, and to refuse attendance by any government elected officials to attend such, quote, bigoted events with Act for America director or staff. I have a question. I'd like to put before you a question that I believe has some merit. Was the letter an attempt to abrogate your rights to contract? And if so, was the letter a demonstration of Sharia policy and imposed as an element of Sharia law? In context with that, do you approve of putting a policy in place banning Sharia compliancy, association, and confederacy for all elected and appointed public officials, as well as all attorneys, judges, and politicians of Brevard County? And do you approve of mandatory disclosure of Sharia compliancy, association, and confederacy for all elected and appointed public officials, as well as all attorneys, judges, and politicians? And this goes back to whether the letter was a sign of Sharia policy and influence in this county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellsworth. Robert Burns.
Good evening.
Hi.
Robert Burns, 5829 Dusky Wing Drive here in Vieira. Here tonight, Commissioner Lober, you asked me to come back at the last meeting and to come back and show proof of a single instance about my statement that during the campaign you claimed that your father was retired from the military. I told you during my comments that there was a video of you stating that on Space Coast Daily from a debate. After the meeting, I went home and immediately posted the video of you stating the following in response to a question to your opponent about her military service. Your response was, and I quote, "I'm actually the first generation in my family not to have some military affiliation or uniform on at some point. My dad retired as a lieutenant commander. My grandfather, who went to law school as his second career, was an enlisted guy in the Army in Germany in World War II. I have nothing but respect for that," end quote. Any person in that audience just meeting you would reasonably come away with the understanding that you stated that your dad was retired from the military. You never referenced anything about the public health service. The question was about the military, and your comments were about the military. You stated on the record to everyone that I questioned and insulted your father's public health service, saying that it didn't exist, and then proceeded to read part of a Facebook comment from before you were elected to try and paint that picture. What you left out was the first part of my comments, which were, and I quote, "You said your dad retired from the military. Which branch?" To which you responded, telling me to do my own research. What you read after that was my comment saying that I could not research something that doesn't exist. It's also important to mention that you went and deleted all of your comments from that thread. Clearly, I am speaking about your comments and what you claimed in the debate, and I'm speaking only about military service. Never did I question your father's actual non-military service, but that's what you inaccurately stated. Now, whether you meant military service or public health service in your statement, you were still inaccurate because you said he retired as lieutenant commander. The fact is, he didn't retire from either the military and only served about 24 months in the public health service. Your statement was wrong, and I questioned you about it. That is completely fair and reasonable, and in no way is an insult or an attack on your family. You said that anyone who attacks your family you don't value and are done with, but you are attacking. Please don't interrupt. You have a tendency to interrupt. This is our time. You certainly take your
discussing this now.
You certainly take your own time.
I will.
Respect the public's comments and allow us to have our 3 minutes, please.
I've done that, but you're interrupting yourself right now and wasting your own time. Do you want to continue?
Yes, I would like to continue.
Then by all means.
Last night I attended a civility meeting.
Oh, guess you're out of time.
Last night I attended a civility meeting, and in the spirit of that meeting, we were trying to work together on both sides of the aisle to move the county forward.
You are out of time, sir.
I'm asking you, what can I do to help work with you?
Well, I have a few comments, and I don't need you to stand up here to respond because now I get my time. Okay? Now, I'm going to pick up where you left off. You don't seem to understand simple English. What you read yourself from that Space Coast Daily article, and I'm assuming that you're right because I haven't pulled it up because I didn't anticipate you'd come back again. You said something along the lines of the first generation of my family born in America not to have been in the military or to have put on a uniform or worn a uniform at some point. Maybe you don't know, but NOAA and Public Health Service also are uniformed services in the U.S. And in terms of the hierarchy, folks, including in the branch that I believe you may have served in, are required to salute the officers in Public Health Service and NOAA just the same. If you incorrectly made an assumption, that's on you. That's not on me. You also mentioned, and you failed to bring it up tonight, that you said there were numerous statements or multiple statements that I made on Facebook along those lines as well. Curiously, those aren't here. So you've not proven what I told you that you would not be able to prove. In fact, you provided evidence to the contrary. When you said which branch, I do have that, and no, I did not erase anything. The fact that you have the comment still suggests that as well, as do I. With respect to which branch, I'm not obligated to correct your misapperception. That's on you. If you want to do opposition research, and what you failed to mention is you were actually paid to do the social media work for an individual I was running against at the time, but you neglected to mention that when you called her a friend and a sister in arms. And you also made the absolutely ridiculous comment that anyone in the legal profession who has ever dealt with me professionally would know instantaneously is nonsense, that you heard I don't represent minorities. So aside from race baiting, and coming here to stir up trouble, why don't you go do something productive for the community?
Okay. All right. Commissioner Smith, it looks like your resolution folks have arrived.
Yes, they have.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Jenna McCarthy and Dr. Joelle Taylor, would you come to the front, please?
Are we having fun yet?
Yep.
Nice to see you again. I'm going to read this, and then you guys can let us know what you have to say. Whereas, in 1991, IVFMD, a South Florida specialized care fertility practice, was founded by Jürgen Iserman, MD. And whereas IVFMD specializes in providing highly individualized fertility treatment plans for patients and leveraging assisted reproductive technologies with higher success rates than the national average. And whereas the new Vieira location is the 6th IVFMD center in Florida. Others include the headquarters in South Miami and centers in Boca Raton, Cooper City, Jupiter, and Naples. And whereas IVFMD treats patients in its local communities while also drawing national and international visitors seeking fertility treatments and complementary second opinions. And now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Brevard County, Florida, do hereby recognize and welcome IVFMD to the community and wish them great success as they address the reproductive needs of the families of Brevard County. Done, ordered, and adopted in regular session this 9th day of April, AD 2019. Madam Chair, I recommend that we approve this resolution.
Motion by Commissioner Smith. Second by Commissioner Pritchett. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
You have the floor.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. We're thrilled to be here in the Viera community. We're excited to bring our practice a little bit further north. As has been the tradition in our practice, we try to bring our practice to the community versus having patients travel down to see us. And so we're very excited about the opportunity to expand IVFMD up this way, and myself and Dr. McCarthy are just thrilled to be here. So thank you for recognizing our practice.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you for what you do.
And we're thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, I wish you the best of luck. My brother's OB-GYN, so the more successful you guys are, the more successful he will be. So make sure where you work hard.
Okay, for this meeting, we had multiple requests to move things around. Because we have a couple of large items on the agenda, and due to the fact that I wasn't able to fairly provide anybody with a time certain, and there are two items on the agenda, both of which are non-controversial, not going to be long, and both have a genuine solid reason to have it moved, because they have actually other government meetings to attend and other obligations, and somebody else whose item was removed from the last meeting due to timing and length of time of the last meeting. So with that, I'm going to move item J1 up. I probably should have warned staff. I apologize.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to give you an update on the staff response to this request.
Okay.
This item is a waiver request from Luke Morelli. He's the engineering consultant representing the property owner, Springer Garden, LLC, for development of property located on the south side of Eber Boulevard, a county road. The project is required to construct a turn lane on Eber Boulevard to access the proposed development. Mr. Morelli is proposing shallow retention areas along the south side of Eber to capture the runoff from the new pavement widening. He is also proposing the installation of trench drains across 2 residential driveways and also the proposed development driveway. This is in order to connect the retention areas and convey the runoff to an existing swale to the east. So he's requesting a waiver from the stormwater management criteria to allow the use of the trench drains in lieu of the required minimum 18-inch RCP storm drains that would typically be constructed under a driveway connection. And we have a number of concerns about that. Primarily, there's an undue hardship that's placed on the property owner, the residential property, with the ongoing higher level of maintenance that's going to be required with trench drains. The applicant has suggested that the developer can take on the maintenance that's required. However, there's no mechanism to enforce that. FDOT actually discourages the use of trench drains. They limit their use, and the typical application is different from what the applicant is proposing. And of course, there's safety concerns with pedestrians and cyclists traversing the grates that cover the trench drain. And there's increased liability associated with that and potential for vehicle damage when not installed or maintained properly. And there are reasonable alternative designs that do not require trench drains in this situation. So for these reasons, staff does not recommend approving this request.
Okay, Commissioner Tabaya, did you want to speak before the applicant? Okay. Name and address, please.
Luke Miorelli, 7607 Coral Drive, West Melbourne, Florida. I'm the president of ME Construction. We're the engineers of record for it. I'd like to state for the record that I'm a professional engineer, and I'm also been recognized in state, county, and federal courts as an expert witness. That being said, the project is to build an event facility at what was the Trail Riders facility there on Eber Road. And it's a phased project, and this is phase 1. Part of the problem is that we have to put a turn lane in, and the turn lane is pretty marginal whether we need it. We have 88 parking spaces. A turn lane of this magnitude for 88 parking spaces is pretty wild, but the owner said, I'd like the turn lane. I'd like to have better access to my facility, so we're good to do that. So now comes the technical portion, so I'll try not to lose you guys in the weeds. Eber Road right-of-way is 33 feet wide. The vast majority of the Eber Road, what you think is the right-of-way, is actually the Melbourne-Tillman Drainage District. So that the current configuration of Eber Road, the line of the county's right-of-way is not quite at the center line, but south of the center line of the existing pavement that's there. So there is no space. Because it's the Melbourne-Tillman, all of the drainage goes to the south to my client's property. So when you go to put the turn lane in, the edge of the turn lane will be 9 to 10 inches below the north side, with all of the 36 feet of water plus a sidewalk draining towards it. So we've got a fairly good amount of water coming there. We originally proposed putting in curb and gutter and piping it, but we got back from the staff said, no, we need to treat the stormwater. So in order to treat the stormwater, the owner's going to provide an easement to the county to put shallow, dry retention ponds. The problem occurs just to the west of us. The owner's property wraps around a parcel, which is this residential parcel. It's residential, it's owned by an elderly gentleman, and it's actually zoned commercial. So it's residential because it's grandfathered in. So when we get in front of that property, when we put the turn lane in and we put the shoulder, we are left with right at about 12 feet between his property line and the edge of the pavement. So further on, the code says that we have to go into our pond at no more than a 4-to-1 slope, and the backside can be a 3-to-1. So that moves the center of the ditch back to about 7 feet from the edge. Right at that location are power poles, and there's a large manhole for AT&T that we can't move. We looked early on about moving the AT&T stuff, and they were talking over $250,000 just to move their equipment out of the way. So we had to give up that one. So if we were to put the pipes in that the county is suggesting, that would work at a portion of it, but when we get down to the owners, the only thing that we know that will work there is the trench drain, because the water table is only 16 to 18 inches below the edge of the road. So we can't dig down and put these pipes in. So the county staff is suggesting that we put in 2 inlets on either side of the driveway and put a pipe that's fully submerged underneath it, and somehow that's going to be easier to clean than taking off the top of a trench drain and cleaning it out. So that would work on those drives, but it won't work on the other ones. The other problem is when we put those inlets in the bottom of the ditch, now we're going to be sticking up into those shallow swales where someone that goes off the road is going to hit the concrete. So that's what we're up against on it. But I don't think this is really a waiver. I think this is asking the county to follow their own code. The code says in 623755, paragraph 4.5D, drainage structures, all drainage structures, unless specifically detailed in these guidelines, shall, at a minimum, conform to the latest edition of FDOT roadway and traffic design standards. That's a separate book. They're referencing in their write-up a manual that's not referenced in the code. So that manual doesn't apply. Secondly, the code says in paragraphs 4.6a, the minimum pipe size shall be 18 inches or equivalent. We're not putting in a pipe. That's not applicable. That says that any pipe you put in the right-of-way needs to be 18 inches. If we're not putting a pipe, how do I apply a standard for pipes on something that's not a pipe? So that doesn't work. If you do the engineering calculations of a trench drain versus an 18-inch pipe, the one we're proposing, the flow is actually higher in the trench drain we're proposing than in the pipe. So that that's a non-starter.
I'm sorry.
Well, can I address the ADA also then?
If Commissioner Tabaya
Okay.
converses with you, I suppose. It's your district.
So, for staff, may I ask staff
Sure.
a question? Can you help? My understanding of this was that a trench drain would create a burden, potentially financially, on the neighbors, the one that Mr. Miarelli has referenced. Is my understanding correct or incorrect?
The financial burden on the homeowner would be the ongoing higher level of maintenance after it's installed.
So, Mr. Miarelli, can you help address that? So, your trench drain would cause a burden on your neighbor. How would you ameliorate that?
I don't know how that is a burden on him. If I put a pipe that's submerged in the water with a inlet on each end so I can't reach the pipe to clean it, how is that harder to maintain than an 18-inch wide by 24-inch deep wide opening that you take the grates off and you take a backhoe or a shovel and clean it out? I don't know how that's harder maintenance, but I dig holes all the time, and that would be easier for me.
While I appreciate that, as a member of the commission, I have to go with. I'm not doubting what you're saying, but I have to defer to staff as we have numerous professional engineers, and if there's even a possibility that the trench drain would cause added burden in any way on a neighbor, I don't think that would be a justifiable action to take. What I did ask staff was about that 18-inch pipe. And as far as a cost difference, just an approximation between the trench and the pipe. And what I got was it would be in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% more, so about $8,000.
The trenches are more expensive. The trenches are actually about $30,000. An 18-inch pipe runs about $45 a foot, and an inlet's about $1,500 to $1,800. So when you do the math, the trenches are actually more expensive. This isn't a method to save money. It's we have a physical constraint that we can't get around. And the physical constraint we can't move. I mean, they say move the telephone poles. That's great, but when you move the telephone poles and the lines aren't in a straight line, now you need a back guy. The back guy in this case would go towards the drive lane, and you can't do that. So there's physical. We're finding out why no one's ever developed this piece. We've been at it for 2 years now trying to get permits, and every time we come up with something, there's someone has a simple, quick solution, but the solution isn't fully thought out.
Well, the numbers I have, again, I'm no reason to doubt you one way or another, but the numbers that I have are substantially different than the ones that you are providing me with. And as a member of the County Commission, again, while I have no reason to say otherwise, I have to go with the information provided by staff, and for that reason, I just would be extremely leery to provide any type of waiver that would place a burden on your neighbor. Out of curiosity, did you get the consent from the neighbor?
The neighbor is 83 years old.
The 83-year-old still can give consent.
He doesn't live there. He doesn't live there. I have no idea where to find him. I mean, the owner actually tried to buy the property, but he found it, but the guy didn't want to sell it. So we're stuck with this piece of property between us for the turn lane, and we can't get around it. I mean, I'd love to if I could pipe under the driveways and move it back. That's a slam dunk. It's easy, but I got too many things in the way.
I think we'd be in a little bit of a different situation if we had heard from, and I understand you might have tried to contact, but if there's any burden placed on a neighbor, especially one that would be completely unaware. You said you've tried to contact him, you've gotten nothing here. Whether he lives there or not, he or she, they're still the owner of the property. And I think it would be terrible for an action of this board to provide added cost, especially without giving that individual the ability to get up here and to to offer their 2 cents one way or another.
I think you're missing the point. It's not a waiver. This is what your ordinance says. What we're proposing complies with the ordinance of Brevard County. And the conservative side of me is kind of irked that I've got to go to the county commission to ask them to enforce their own ordinance. If it's ambiguous, that's not something that we did. The ordinance says that this is allowed.
Well, the conservative side of me says, as a property rights guy, when you infringe on someone else's right, that's not all that conservative. And normally this happens the other way. So I probably shouldn't, be saying this, but if you're disappointed with the staff and then the decision of this commission, the woman sitting to my left is a way that that this could be handled. That's your next step. But again, without the consent of your neighbor, who this will cause an added burden on, I can't imagine getting an 83-year-old individual or any individual up here today, tomorrow, or 3 months from now saying the actions that you took without making me aware is costing me $100 a month, $1,000 a year, whatever the heck it is. I just can't consciously make that decision.
He doesn't have a pipe right now. There is no culverts on any of the driveways there. So no matter what we do, we're going to impose an added maintenance on him by doing the work in the right-of-way. No matter what we do, there are no pipes. It's just flat that comes out there. So it's not like he's got a pipe now and we're giving him something that has to be maintained more. We're basically saying, we're giving you something you got to maintain anyway, no matter what we do, because the county does not maintain the culverts for personal driveways. And that's fine. That's been the policy. But he doesn't have one now, so we're going to give him one. So which one do we give him?
I mean, the reality is, when your client purchases this is probably the due diligence they should have done prior to the purchasing of this property. We wouldn't be in this situation had they gone through this. So this was a decision.
They've owned it for years.
And whether they've owned it two years, 20 years, unless ordinance have changed in that period of time, this is something that could have been dealt with instead of,
There is no ordinance that says you have to have an 18-inch pipe underneath your driveway. There's lots of driveways that are built without pipes. What the ordinance says is if you put in a pipe, it has to be this size. It doesn't say you have to have one. It's really straightforward, and that's what it says. I mean, that's what the ordinance says. We've designed it per the ordinances, and when we've got objections to it, but there's no ordinance that the ordinance specifically says it's allowed.
I'm going to divert to staff on this one. I respect everyone's opinion on this one. My issue, and it more so than what has been raised by staff, is your next door neighbor. Now with Facebook and Twitter and MySpace, you can pretty much contact anyone within a reasonable amount of time. And should you get the consent of your neighbor for that added cost on maintenance, I probably would be on the other side of that. But until that takes place, Madam Chair, I'm going to make a motion to deny the waiver as requested by staff.
I have a motion by Commissioner Tobias. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I'm kind of torn here because I don't know what the ordinance says, and if Mr. Mayorelli says there is no stipulation, can I ask staff, is that true?
Our stormwater management criteria, section 4.6 on storm sewer or culvert design, does specifically say that the minimum, talking about minimum pipe size, and it refers to 18 inches or equivalent elliptical pipe. It does not mention trench drains, but it specifically talks about reinforced concrete pipe. I'd also like to add, if I can, that if the system were piped, the distance is longer in order to get from the first retention area all the way to the east where it's being conveyed to. So it's about 500 feet approximately. as compared to much shorter sections of trench drain under the driveways. And so when it turns into a roadway drainage system, it's turned over to the county to maintain. The homeowner would not be maintaining the piped, that length of piped drainage system.
Mr. Mirella, you said it would actually be cheaper if you did it that way?
It would, except for I've got a $250,000 AT&T manhole that's right in the way. The manhole is directly on the corner of the property, and then it's associated with that manhole in the direction of drainage, which is on the west side of our proposed driveway, is a 20 by 30 AT&T easement that's filled with all sort of equipment. So I can't pipe around the manhole. I've got no place to go. I can't go under the road because I can't get the pipe deep enough. And if I do get the pipe deep enough to go under the road, the bottom of the pipe is below the ditch over at Americana. So I'd love to be able to just throw a pipe in a couple of mitered end sections and go home. But the problem is if I put the pipe in at the elevation where it's above the water, now my entrance is too steep and I have a tail dragger. When the back of your car drags because it's too steep coming up, and that's using a class 4 pipe. So it's not like we haven't thought through this process, and as a process of elimination, this is the only thing we could come up. Now, if they want us to put the neighbor with the underneath his driveways and put 2 culverts there, that's fine, but at my owner's property, I don't have room because I've got this AT&T equipment that's in the way. I can't get a pipe in there. I can't get an inlet in there.
Staff?
If you did a whole piped system, not just pipes under the driveways with mitered ends, a whole pipe system, the pipe could be inundated in the water. It doesn't have to be high because downstream at American, it has depth to connect into. You would have to put a structure into the lane of the road to be able to get around that AT&T box, but it can be done. It just requires an additional structure.
But when we put the additional structure in, and you put it at the elevation, if you start in Americana and work your way north, which was the first thing we planned to do, the very first design we did, that pipe starts coming out of the ground. So now that pipe will have insufficient cover per the county requirements to put it underneath the roadway. I mean, it's because it's not a crowned road like you normally see. This is a road that drains all the way to our side, and so as our side's low, and it keeps getting lower. So the pipe, if I take the existing edge of pavement and I put the cover on that's required in the base and the sub-base material and everything else, I'm below the ditch at Americana. We've worked all those numbers. Staff's made these suggestions, and we have shown them why they don't work.
So it's still the staff's position that it doesn't work? I mean, do you agree with that position that it won't work?
No, we believe the pipe system will work. We haven't been shown that it won't work. The grades out there are very flat. The pipe will have to be very flat, but it won't put undue hardship on the next door neighbor, and it'll be a better system as opposed to something that's a higher maintenance and not recommended for permanent use.
Commissioner Pritchett?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I'm going to second Commissioner Tobias' motion for discussion. Hearing the information, I'm going to ask you guys a question in a second, but I don't know if I'm going to feel comfortable giving you a waiver. Not maybe that something else might need to be done, but I have some concerns also when you put in there that trench drains could pose public safety concerns. So that's got my attention too, along with Commissioner Tobias' other concern. And then you also put in there that there, I'm guessing this is what you're talking about, the pipe system, that there are reasonable alternative designs that won't require the trench drains. Would it be possible for this gentleman maybe to get with you with maybe some other creative ideas, or is the pipes the one that you think is the best one to go with, or?
I mean, engineering, there's many ways to skin a cat. The pipe system was an alternative that staff came up with. We would definitely encourage any, ideas that maybe we didn't think about, and evaluate those if they were provided.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Would it not be permissible under the code to have them store the water on site to some degree as well?
It is permissible. Actually, that was a suggestion by staff at some point, and it was conveyed to staff that they didn't think that the grades on site would allow them to get the water to the ponds on site.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayorelli, would it work if you had more time to maybe reach out to this 83-year-old gentleman?
I'm not certain. I mean, if we can put, what the county wants to do with the pop-up structures, fine. We're fine. We'll put those underneath that, but it's, no matter what we do, he's got maintenance. I mean, there's just no way around that because we're now putting a swale across the front because the road all drains our way. Right now, there's no stormwater management whatsoever for the area. So the problem still comes down to the AT&T manhole that's located right in the center of the swale, and the swale is the only place that we can put it because we don't have any space and to meet the requirements. And we've got a manhole right. I can't run a pipe through a manhole. If I run out into the street to go around the manhole, I'm not deep enough.
So let me ask this. If you do it as per staff and it becomes a physical nightmare, whose problem is it?
Commissioners, if they install a pipe system that traverses over the frontage of a couple of separate parcels, typically the county assumes the maintenance responsibility for those facilities. What he's proposing, though, is a modification to the driveway, which is a privately owned facility, which would remain a privately owned facility, and it will have a trench drain in it. And I can tell you from experience, been around a few years, trench drains are a high-maintenance item. They are a high-hazard item. There have been multiple suits over issues, not in my experience, but I've read about them, where trench drains, grates become dislodged and then vehicles fall into the trench drain and you have a lawsuit on your hands. You don't have that problem with pipes except if the pipe collapses somehow or develops a hole in it. But it's typically not in the immediate area where people drive and are
I
designed
think
to
Commissioner
drive.
Smith's question was, if we do the pipe system as per recommended by the county, is the county ultimately responsible if it, because you have an engineer too, and I'm sure, it's not like you're a novice up here. How many years have you been doing this?
40.
Owned your own company and everything else. So I don't discount what you have to say. It's just as credible as what a county engineer says.
Well,
But if he believes that it's going to cause, it's not going to produce a proper drainage, if it doesn't produce a proper drainage, is it our liability at that point because that's what we recommended? Is that what you were asking, Commissioner
Yes.
Smith? Okay.
Thank you.
We haven't seen evidence that indicates and supports what Mr. Morelli is saying.
So then
about
the county
coverage.
shouldn't worry about it then?
So, well, we haven't seen it. We haven't seen something that shows the design that he's referring to. And it's not been submitted to us, not in a calculation, it's not been presented to us in any way, shape, or form, other than the statements that he's made. Our look at it indicates that we don't think we have the problem that he's describing.
Okay, because that's how I took it by the discussion by, I'm sorry, what was your name? You're new or something, because we're all trying to figure out who you are up here.
Has she been there
Rachel
long?
Drenna.
Okay.
I manage engineering.
Thank you. But Rachel was sort of explaining that the county staff didn't believe that there would be a problem with the drainage system with the pipes. So I'm sure that we've at least looked at it preliminarily.
We have looked at it, and we feel that it can be done. Mr. Morelli, I'm not discounting what he says. If he can show us that there's a problem there, we can start trying to work towards another solution. But we're really reluctant, as is DOT, to use trench drains as an option.
I don't think anybody's talking about trench drains anymore.
That's not correct. We use DOT trench drains at DOT roads building Cumberland farms on several locations, and we've never had any problem with them. So DOT regularly approves us. Commissioner Pritchett, up at your neck of the woods, the one at 50 and US 1 has trench drains at the driveway. Same thing.
Commissioner Lober?
Mr. Dangoff, just a quick question with respect to that. When you say that DOT either disfavors them or whatever the particular language that you used was, is it your belief that those are essentially items that are put in place when no other option will suffice?
Correct.
Thank you.
All right, well, it would appear that you don't have the votes to move forward for the trench drains. I won't call it a variance, but the trench drains. I mean, working with staff, would that be something, I mean, I know.
We've been working with staff for 2 years, and some of these issues have come up, and they've been continuously coming up. I don't want to throw staff under the bus, but they're looking at literally hundreds of projects. And we've been living this project trying to resolve the issues. And so staff sits down for 5 minutes and comes up with their
Well, perhaps you
their
can sit with
latest
Mr. Denninghoff,
But to solve
because
it.
John has all the time
John's
in the
been here
world.
since dirt. I mean,
As the assistant county manager, he's got all the time in the world, but obviously, we've taken this much time to talk about it. It's
So-
obviously something important for you to finish if it's taken 2 years, and we would ask very nicely if John could sit down with you and figure this out.
We'd be happy to do that.
Commissioner Pritchett?
I was just going to recommend that you get with Commissioner Tobias and with staff, and then you guys can work out something creative together, and then maybe bring it back.
okay, I didn't know if it was proper to talk with the commissioners beforehand, otherwise I would have briefed you.
Most certainly, we do that a
Yeah.
lot in our districts,
Yeah,
work
okay.
things out, so.
Very good.
Madam Chair, I
Sure.
would certainly be willing to sit in on that meeting with Mr. Denninghoff and Mr. Miorelli to help
That's great.
facilitate and be more than willing to see if we can handle something administratively. And if not, bring it back here for consideration one way or
Awesome.
another.
That sounds like a good solution.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Denninghoff, too.
So I'll withdraw my motion at this time.
That takes care of my light as well.
Okay. All right, so we're good. That took longer than we thought it would. Item I2, again, these are the two items that I've moved only because of special circumstances. Commissioner Tobias? And I have a card on this, too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me preface this with, I'm not asking for a vote today. I'm just asking for board direction as to what you guys think off the bat, because this will require quite a bit of staff time, and I did not want to burden staff before I had an opinion on, or had opinion, obviously, because of sunshine. So it was brought to my attention by a constituent that the Barefoot Bay Recreational District in County Commission District 3 collects their fees on the county annual tax assessment, and there's confusion in the district on whether the county is responsible for these assessments. Keep in mind that while the county has taken steps to get out of the golf business, the Barefoot Bay course supported by this district is, quote, in a downward death spiral, according to their official budget documents. At the same time, it appears that the special assessment rates have increased above the CPI over the past couple of years. However, it may be possible to change the way this special assessment is collected. This would prevent confusion as many residents see the tax assessed and approved by the board. Not surprisingly, since it's classified as a recreational district tax. This is not to say I know all the factors leading to the Board of Trustees or what they're dealing with. In fact, I don't. We don't have any more say in what they do with their special assessment than they have with ours. Still, there could be a significant amount of work with the county attorney's office, and that's why I'm asking if you think it is in the best interest to separate and stop collecting the special assessment below the line for the Barefoot Bay Recreational District.
Okay, do we want cards first?
Whatever way you want to do it.
Yeah. Reverend Earl? You're up. I say it's a good thing.
How you doing, Madam Chair?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good for an old man. This ain't too good for a young kid like you, but old man, that ain't half bad.
Well, I appreciate the young kid comment, but
Well, I'm
Not quite.
76, so I can call you young kid. I brought this to,
can you give us your name and address, please?
oh, Reverend Earl Medlin, I live in Barefoot Bay. And I don't think it is the county's business to be collecting this tax because you are giving them a shield to hide behind so that they can just arbitrarily raise the amount of fee anytime they want to, and then they have the power of a real government behind them to intimidate and force us into compliance with little trivial matters. In fact, they don't seem to understand this is not monopoly money. This is real money that's coming from real people. If we need more money, we'll just reach deeper into your pocket, and if you don't like it, you find a soft spot and drop gravestone dead. And we will spend the money any way we want to. In fact, now they've hired 2 full-time code enforcement officers to drive around 24/7, 365 days a year, looking for trivial things to stick it to and harass the people out there. And you're helping them do that by allowing them to keep raising this. And as you see, I gave you a rundown just the past few years, how just arbitrarily, and you got people out there, I'm 76 years old, you got other people out there that's 3 years older in California dirt, and their C&I dog is asleep half of the time, and they don't see how it's raised like that. But if you quit doing this and giving them a shield to hide behind and let them do their own business, when they start raising the fees for the privilege of living out there, then the people will start noticing it when they have to go to the office and write the check for it. Then we can have a say-so about it, but other than that, you're just allowing them to hide behind a real government. And I would like for you to, however it was voted in for them to be able to do this, I'd like for you to find a way to vote it out and tell them you take care of your own business and we'll take care of ours. That's, so, and I appreciate you for listening to me. Y'all have a great day. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Clifford Reppiger?
Good evening. Thank you, Honorable Chairman, Honorable Commissioners. My name is Cliff Reppiger. My business address is 1901 Harbor City Boulevard. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Rossway Swan, and we serve as general counsel to the Barefoot Bay Recreation District. Prior to tonight's meeting, I sent an email out to you all that described the setup for the district and the process by which the district's assessment is collected. It's been that way for the last decade. The district has collected its assessment in the same manner, using the statutory authority under 197 and 418 to utilize the services of the tax collector for purposes of tax collection. Prior to that, prior to the change in 2009, the district did collect its assessment in-house. That was not an effective method of collection, and so in 2009 they moved it to the tax roll. They have had no issues with regard to assessment collection since it was moved to the tax roll. As far as the process itself, the process is extremely transparent. So some of the things that the speaker has said, I'm a little bit confused by and take a little bit of issue with, because the process of the setting of the district's assessment is an extremely transparent process. Just like any other government entity, it goes through a budget cycle that begins with preparation of a budget and hearings that start in November and go all the way through June of every year. The process includes a number of public hearings and workshop meetings where that are noticed, which every member of the public that's a resident of Barefoot Bay can attend and give public comment. The budget, when it's prepared, each June is mailed out to the residents prior to a public hearing that's on the budget and the assessment rate, and that's done every single year. And adopted at public meetings by resolution. The statutes allow the authority of the district to collect the assessment on the tax roll. They've done that. I believe the charge that they receive for that is like 2% of the assessment from the tax collector for providing that service. So it's an extremely cost-effective method and manner of collection for the district. It allows the district to track the revenues, and it ensures that the district receives approximately 95% of its budgeted and assessed special assessments for the year. Prior to that, in 2009, they were well below, and I don't have the specific figure for you as indicated in my email, but they were well below that 95% in terms of the collection of their revenue that they did in-house. So that's where it stands, and I'll make myself available for any questions you might have about the process.
You timed that perfectly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Question for Commissioner Tobias, also known as Commissioner Jack Sparrow. Quite frankly, with any of this stuff pertaining to either taxation districts or property issues that are essentially limited to one district, the commissioner for that district is the one that's going to have to live with either the happiness or the ire of their constituents. Is this something that you think your constituents want? If so, I'll support it. If not, then where are we at?
I've done no polling to find out one way or another on this one, in all honesty. I appreciate citizens that do get involved, and I certainly want to serve my function is bringing issues up from constituents. What this comes down to is you guys all have seen your taxes, of course. You know, we've got the ad valorem at the top, and we've got the non-ad valorem at the bottom. And the way that I'm sure most of our taxes work, mine included, the ad valorem is the greater portion of that. Many folks in Barefoot Bay, the ad valorem represents less than 5% of their entire tax responsibility. So, you know, these folks get tax bills in excess of $1,000, 3/4 of that made up by the Barefoot Bay Rec District. We are only responsible for, or the tax collector is responsible for collecting that. So we do get phone calls saying, you know, why have my taxes gone up? And yet we have no control. That is a budget process by the Barefoot Bay Rec District. It is transparent, it is open, but it is also pretty confusing to many of these folks out there that when they see their tax bill, it's a responsible thing to do to call up their county commissioner. I'm more than willing to sit down and help explain it to them, but for every person that calls, I imagine there are many folks that don't call. You know, you know, Reverend Earl's correct, right? This, you know, this becomes an issue when they don't pay. You know, liens are put on properties and by the county. So, you know, it does end up a little confusing for these folks. Whether or not Barefoot Bay Rec District, you know, they've done it before. I think the attorney just mentioned they collected it prior to 2009, so we know they have the ability to do it. But the statute is clear and allows us to divulge responsibility of collection of those resources back to the Barefoot Bay Recreational District. I didn't think we had that authority, and the county attorney's office and my staff corrected me of that. So we absolutely do have that authority, but it does require quite a bit of work. And before I burden staff with that, I wanted to find out if this is something that you know, you guys have an appetite for. If I heard, you know, two other people say that this is something that they think that they could support once they saw more of the information, and you know, I certainly would move forward on that.
Commissioner Pritchett?
A couple questions. Ms. Bentley, on this, I'm sorry, I thought this was more like the tax collector almost being a flow-through agent. They're collecting it for them, and they just roll it back into Barefoot Bay. So they're making their own assessments from their meetings, which they have something legally set up where they're allowed to tax their community on this. And I'm guessing if we took it off the bill, they're still going to collect it, but they would probably have to go back into being a monthly fee then instead of a yearly process on the tax collector, correct?
That is what is anticipated. There may be a route for them to go back on the bill.
Okay, because I kind of thought this, in the city of Titusville, they did that with stormwater. We used to get on every water bill, but they went ahead and moved it over to the tax bill, so we paid one big bill at the end of the year, and they had easier time with collections and...
Yes, it's the uniform method of taxation.
Okay.
Special assessments.
So, Commissioner Tobias, whatever you think your citizens would want to do, I think it might be a little bit more of a burden on some of them because they're going to have to pay a monthly payment then instead of one. But I don't think it's going to affect us at all. I think the effect is going to be on your community, sir. So I think whatever you establish that you'd like to do for your citizens. So.
You know, this just came to my attention here recently. I haven't had the time to do an active poll, I guess, down on the citizens of Barefoot Bay. But if you guys universally were against this, obviously I'd put the kibosh on that at this juncture. That being said, if they paid the monthly fee, you know, they would understand more likely who they could petition for change, whether they wanted to spend more and get better services or whether they wanted to spend less. But we do get my office does get a number of phone calls, and we're more than happy to help and explain them to them that the Barefoot Bay Recreational District is, as you said, merely a pass-through. And if you're interested, you're more than welcome to see the trustees on that one. But it is confusing when this uniform collection of taxes that one office is collecting it from various governing bodies. So, you know, because I generally don't vote for tax increases, so when many of these citizens get bills that have gone up more than the CPI, it is very understandably confusing. So if I don't hear any objection, I would go ahead and I would commit to, if it would make you guys feel better, holding a town hall meeting, which I'd be more than willing to publicly notice so anyone else could attend, any of us could attend and see what the residents of Barefoot Bay have to say on this, because again, I've only spoken with a couple and I don't generally have you know, a good understanding of what the average temperature is down there.
I think, sir, my opinion, then you go do what you think is going to be best for your community and probably see what you would like to do with that.
Okay, so not hearing an objection, then we'll start drafting something up. I'll go hold a town hall down there and report back. Of course, we'll publicly notice if anyone else wants to come down. Certainly want to give you as much information before, you know, we were to vote on this at a junction later down the road. Thank you.
Commissioner Lober?
Ms. Bentley, do we need any kind of a motion, or is that sufficient?
That's sufficient for this one.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, back on track. Item H1.
Good evening, Commissioners. The primary purpose for this budget supplement is to adjust the budget for balance forward for the funds and dollars being brought forward from the prior fiscal year into fiscal year 18-19. Of course, the adopted budget includes an estimated balance forward, and then the first several months of the new fiscal year, we are accruing revenues and expenses, and then we get the final balance forward, and we work with the departments and the county manager's office to put together this budget supplement. So this budget supplement increases the current budget by just under $17.9 million, or 1.36% from the current budget. And did want to point out that that's less than last year's budget supplement, which was around $35.6 million, or just under 3%. So the agenda package summarizes the total change per fund and then also includes each individual budget change request. So we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Lober, second by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Item H2.
Where's everybody going?
Should we give folks a second, maybe?
We could take 5 if you want. It's gonna be a
However you
long
want to do it.
one.
I'm just thinking that way we're not starting as they're all piling out.
Let me give you guys this.
However you want to do it.
Little definition
You want 5
things
minutes?
here. What underneath?
You can keep going, whatever you want.
Be a while. What do you think?
You guys.
What do you guys think? What about you?
I'm good.
Oops.
Thanks. I guess maybe the best bet is to have Commissioner Pritchett discuss what was just handed out, and then maybe take 5 so that we can kind of process that.
Okay.
Okay, I went through our ordinance, and I just got a couple things for conversation. I did just a couple of definition changes. On page 2, the second whereas, where it says dogs and cats, due to their, I'm not going to say this word.
Sentience?
Thank you, Commissioner Lober. But I
Yes,
think
ma'am.
what we need to do is either omit this one or put in all animals. I think that would be a good term right there.
My concern is we have animals that without question aren't sentient. Sea urchins don't have brains. Amoebas are technically animals. I don't think they have a sense of self-awareness. But I think, I mean, we've already, in a prior resolution, adopted that, I believe that exact verbiage with respect to the Senate bill put forth by Senator Gruters in the prior commission meeting.
I
So-
just think you might have some unforeseen consequences down the road with that, so if you think about that for just a few, so.
Yeah, if I may just, and if you want, I'll let you go through, but I'm just thinking maybe it's better to kind of discuss them as we go. With respect to that, my thought is it's just in the recital, so there's no legal tooth or teeth with respect to that. So I don't know in the recitals that there really was going to be any consequence. We could say, whereas the sky is purple, and it really, whether it's right, wrong, or arguable, it's not going to change anything.
Okay, I just think there's been a lot of passion with this. I'm trying to be very careful with our wording. On page 3, from your information there, I just wanted to throw in there too that the USDA also said that part of the drop was due to revamped enforcement. So I don't think that would hurt the context, but I think that would just kind of give a little bit more oversight to that one sentence.
That's fine.
Okay. And on page 5, I pinked it out. I was just thinking, I don't think we can regulate that on the animal shelters. So I was thinking on the pinks, we might want to just go ahead and leave that out because we weren't trying to do that with them necessarily on this. And then on the definition of breeder, I think we could admit that altogether because we've already identified 2 breeders, hobby and licensed commercial. So I don't think that this is relevant anymore because there's not anything outside of those 2 definitions.
My concern, just to go through them again, as I'm looking at it for the first time, with respect to the animal shelters and the rescue organizations, I know the reason that was specifically included was there was a concern that we would have folks basically posing as legitimate organizations trying to make money above and beyond what it costs to essentially maintain their activity. So that's why that language was there. I know that folks on both sides of the equation actually had requested that, so that's something I'd ask that we consider keeping.
Okay, I'm good with it. I just thought it might be kind of hard to regulate those 2 items.
And it may be,
So-
I'm just, with respect to the ability to regulate,
Okay.
I'm just going by what the sheriff's office tells me they're able or not able to enforce. And then as far as striking the definition of breeder, I'd have to defer to Ms. Bentley on whether that would have consequences, and if so, what those consequences would be. And if it's not clear, my thought is, even if it's not referenced elsewhere, if there's any question, I'd leave it, because if it's not referenced, it may not do much of anything.
I think it would be better, though, to remove it, because I think the ordinance is a little wordy, and I think this makes it a little more pinpointed, just a thought on it.
I think you could go either way on that one.
And you don't foresee any unforeseen consequences with taking it out?
Not at this time.
Okay, well, based on that representation, that's fine. I'll agree to strike that. We'll leave the first 2, though.
Okay. On page 6, I had some calls from the kennel associations, and they asked to add in, and I think it just clarified it. I think we knew we were talking about hobby breeders that sold to pet stores, but after the word hobby breeders, they wanted to add who sell to pet stores to ensure they are hobby breeders or a hobby breeder.
Bear with me just a sec. I just want to make sure that there's not going to be some sort of a conflict as a result. That looks fine.
Okay. And at the end of that paragraph, this was in one of the copies that I had. I think Ms. Bentley had put it in and removed it, but I thought that was a fairly good statement. Nothing in this section is intended to create new inspection requirements insofar as the hobby breeders are concerned.
The copy that you sent, and I know we've had so many different drafts of this thing, is that language already in there? Because I see it in the black text, but also in the handwritten green portion.
Oh, sure is.
Okay, so I'll just disregard that one since it's in there.
Okay. Never mind.
No, it's okay.
Okay. And then on page 7, I pinked some things there, sir, that I thought were, I think like retail sale should just be for any animal that takes place at the same time or location. So I thought I would get rid of the limited to and those items, because retail is just retail sale, just a suggestion. And then on the licensed agricultural breeders, I went ahead and used the USDA definition, because I don't think we can enforce the number of puppies, and I think 4 or more breeding females, after they have 4 or more females, they are just a commercial breeder.
The problem with that, and I've spoken with the sheriff about this, and if I'm not absolutely verbatim identical, it's for all intents and purposes pretty darn close. I don't want to misrepresent anything that he's said. We've had that discussion about limiting it either to a specific number or alternatively to tie it to a number of breeding females or to basically the parents of the puppies or kittens. The concern is that with respect to that, they could have essentially an unlimited number of puppies, and where do we draw the line in terms of, well, they could have had 12 for this particular litter or 10 at this litter, and it also goes back and ties in to the offset and picks up where Hobby Breeder left off, going up to 48 and carries it over. So it's one of those, I wouldn't necessarily care if the remainder of the ordinance were drafted that way and the sheriff thought that he could enforce it that way more easily. But my impression from the conversations I've had with him is such that may be more difficult for him to enforce. It's not that it's impossible, but it may be more difficult. And I understand what you're trying to do, and it makes sense. But there's nothing, in my estimation, that precludes us, and we're doing exactly that with the definition of hobby breeder, for instance, of using a different definition than the USDA uses solely for purposes of this ordinance. So the USDA definition of hobby breeder is night and day different from our definition. So in that sense, there's no real onus on us to tie into that.
Okay, I'm just not real sure that we can enforce it outside of that licensing right there if we don't go with their definition. If you would think about that maybe a few minutes.
Okay, after we take a break, I'll take a look at it.
You definitely know legal things better than I do.
Well, this is kind of a novel area as well.
Okay. And then on the very bottom part, I did research it, and there are different degrees of violations. So I think what we need to do is to change it to if they've lost their license. And I think that way you can find it, because there could be a very small violation or a violation that's severe enough that they've lost their license. So
I've got to tell you, that's one I've got to view as a critical issue. If there is something that's truly trivial, I trust BCSO and by extension the state attorney's office to use prosecutorial discretion and police discretion on whether or not to enforce something that may be truly trivial. I don't think that he's looking for folks that have some paperwork snafu, but I think when we start parsing through that, we're going to have a problem real quickly in terms of being able to include what we want to include while excluding what we want to exclude. And I think to say that if they're shut down, I mean, we've seen that even from the examples that I brought up, especially in relation to that 51-slide PowerPoint, that there is some horrendous activity that does not result in people getting shut down. So essentially, if we were to do that, I think that would basically neuter, forgive the pun here, the effect of the ordinance totally.
Okay, well, if we just leave it in as a violation and we're writing a law, I don't think I could do that, because we work at a big facility. It's a good facility. It's a church. The fire department will come along and we'll get a few violations, but it's not enough to shut us down, nor should it be. And like in restaurants, they get a few violations. So since we haven't determined degrees of violations and we're going with the USDA licensing, I think the only other way to do it is if they've done something and lost their license, then they've lost their privilege of selling to our pet store. So I think other than, this is just definition with legal with already someone who's licensed doing this, and this is why I brought back the licensed commercial breeder, because I think the mess with the hobby breeder was going to just take us right to the puppy mills.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I apologize.
That's okay, sir. I know you're passionate on it. So I think just resting upon what they do and knowing they're going to pull a license if something's been severe enough. I might be even negotiate with you more months on that, but I think it's going to have to be whether or not they've done something severe enough to have lost their license with the USDA, because they do pull them at times.
If that's where you're at, then the ordinance is going to fail. It's that simple, because that's one I'm not going to budge on.
Okay, we might have a real problem right with
We
that one
may.
then. Okay. All right, and the rest of them were just page 9. We put the itemized fee for the adoptions. I think that could go out because that was in there when we were considering a monopoly situation without having licensed commercial breeders. Item F, I'm still not sure if
fine.
it's necessary in there. Maybe make a decision on that. And then G1, instead of any pet store found to be in violation, I changed it to all found in violation of this section.
That's fine, too.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can say with respect to the item on page 8 is, again, aside from what I mentioned with respect to having prosecutorial and police discretion, because it's got to go through both of those hurdles, BCSO has to make an arrest, which they have the discretion to do or not to do, and then after that happens, intake at the state attorney's office has the discretion to file or not file. So if it's someone didn't pay their light bill, that's, I don't think there's a realistic chance that's ever going to get filed on, because it's got to make through those two particular thresholds. I can tell you, if you want to limit it to animals to laws or requirements pertaining to animal welfare, that's fine. But beyond that, I just don't see watering it down anymore.
Okay, I'm not sure I see it that way with you, but I just think to leave it out there with any violation, and when we're writing a law, I just think we're going to have to say a violation of degree 5 or something, and I didn't find those. So the only thing I could find to make the difference between the two is if they've done something that's severe, they get their license yanked. So I just don't know how else to do this, because there are so many minor violations, and to say that maybe they've had a few minor violations.
I understand where you're coming from.
Okay.
But respectfully, with what we've already seen and what's already been presented, what it takes to have a license yanked is so far above and beyond what any ordinary either pet owner or pet purchaser would be inclined to tolerate. I mean, we're essentially not regulating anything if we say that, because if their license is yanked and they can't sell, then what are we doing regulating them anyway? We're saying that you're not allowed to sell based on federal law, so we're going to regulate you and say that you're not allowed to sell. I mean, then this 11-page ordinance would essentially be worthless.
Well, I don't know. There's still some good points in it of the pet stores putting up where they got it. They're proving now they've got it from a USDA licensed pet store with the names on it and the breed. So I think there's some good things in here still. It's just I am uncomfortable putting out an ordinance. We're writing a law. It's a law that is just got some areas there that could have some very bad consequences.
And again, I think that the compromise, if there is one to be had there, is laws pertaining to the welfare of animals, welfare or treatment of animals, so that if they get a speeding ticket, it's not, well, you got a speeding ticket, so therefore we're going to yank your ability to sell. I don't think anyone would ever perceive it that way. I don't think it would ever end up being filed based upon that. But if there really is that level of concern, I think that's what we're trying to address in the first place. If it's something that rises to the level of there being a violation based on animal welfare, I think that's what we're looking to shut down. The one store that we've heard from, which as I understand it is the one and only pet store in the county, has indicated unambiguously multiple times he does not buy from any breeders that have USDA violations. There was no discussion as to severity or to level or anything of that sort, so I'm just asking to hold him to his word.
I know. When we do this, I know we have different personalities and emotions, and I try to get that all outside of it when we're doing this and just think of best and worst case scenarios. And I think that could really set us up without enough of a definition. If you came back with a definition on violations of degrees, maybe that would help, but it's just too ambiguous. And I just think just for any violation is just, that's just a real crunchy point right there for me.
Well, what's the absolute minimum that you'd want to see there?
I don't know. I'd have to see what the different, I try to research different degrees of violations, and I just couldn't find them. I went through the whole USDA website, and I did see where they do pull license from breeders if they're not abiding by what they should be doing. And that's why I got comfortable with putting back in the licensed commercial breeder, because then you have at least some oversight and regulation again. So I know we're going to have to, I don't know. I know everybody's got bad thoughts on some of the USDA stuff, but there's some people that have some very good thoughts with it too. So I don't know if I'm in a position where I can form that type of an opinion, whether to throw it all out or not of what they do. But as of right now, I don't even think you can enforce it otherwise. So,
Ms. Bentley, do you believe we can enforce it?
As written?
Yes.
Yes.
And then I'll ask Sheriff Ivey, do you believe you can enforce it, sir?
But what are the degrees of violations? I mean, we haven't determined that. I mean, it's not in there. And I don't know who's going to set up that standard right now. I don't even know who's qualified to do that.
There essentially are none. It's up to the sheriff to determine whether or not to arrest someone for violating this, and if he does choose to do that,
Well, I
then it
trust
goes
the
to the state
sheriff,
attorney's office.
But what if he's not sheriff anymore?
Then
We
it-
have some
Well, let's not
wackadoodle
talk
leader.
about that.
Yeah, it still has to go to the state attorney's office.
That's not even a topic for discussion right now. I see both sides, and I know both of you are very strong on wanting to see the impact of this. To the side of could we enforce it, I believe our county attorney is right. I do believe as it's written it is enforceable. I also see the other side too where perhaps we would want to look at, and I would want to take a minute to look at it, but perhaps we could put in multiple violations or something of that nature. Somebody that's violating it is going to get caught by us. That's the bottom line. But I do believe it's enforceable where it stands right now.
Okay, well, the part we're talking about right now is just where they get the puppy sheriff and how they can buy it from a licensed commercial breeder. And see, here's the problem is we can't find out what violations they have out there, but we can determine that they have had their license revoked. Now, when they get them here, of course, you can do your sheriff stuff and determine that, and that's a whole nother part not in here. But that's right here, this is just a different part of what we're trying to set up of when they're buying the puppies from out of state, and you can't find any place really online where it even puts their violations up there.
Well, there is also our team, whenever we're looking at something of that magnitude, we would certainly investigate it thoroughly, calling upon our partners in other parts of the country to help us in that. I think what we have to look at is what can we do at this point to accomplish what we all said from the very beginning of this. And I think looking at the language of this, how it's written, I think we're there from an enforcement standpoint. I will also say that when you look at what we do every day, discretion is part of what we do. And one thing that I would always tell everybody in every realm is I'd never want to take away officer discretion in the things that we're doing. So, I think you have to rely on those officers to look at, what's been leading up to this and look at it from a big picture point of view, not just a single isolated incident.
Sir, with respect, I know you have no hypersensitive deputies that work for you, but let's say, for instance, you had this hypothetical hypersensitive deputy. They went ahead and cuffed someone for violating some trivial law. That's not the be-all and end-all, is it? It's still got to go to the state attorney, and it still has to go through the intake process, that it's still got, even if it's a misdemeanor, it's still got to go to a trial attorney, and that trial attorney has the ability to simply not charge or to dismiss the charges. So it's got to go through several hands before it ever makes it to the point where it would actually impact someone. Is that not the case?
That is true, yes, sir.
So you have prosecutorial discretion in addition to law enforcement discretion.
Right. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, but see, we wrote this as anybody who has a documented violation, period. That's what we wrote. So let's just say they left a wet towel in the corner, they go in and get inspected, they get a little violation for wet towel in the corner. We don't have the degrees of violations here. So I think we have a problem in what we've written. Again, if there came other words if we found degrees of violations, but I couldn't find that. So just to have that in there, I think is going to cause more harm than when we know that if there's violations, they lost their license. That's some comfort I found is we're going to shut down the ones and not be able to buy from them if they've had their license revoked in a while because it's been bad enough to do it. So that's my thing right now is I don't know the degrees of violation, same as the church. They might have piggybacked them extension cords and wrote me up one, or we might have done something severe, and the severe one should kind of cause you more problems, but they're still violations.
And again, I'm happy to change it to say violations pertaining to any law or regulation pertaining in any way to animal welfare. So electrical cords have nothing to do with it.
No,
Wet towels
and
have
I'm
nothing to do
not
with it.
talking about fire right now, but we're talking about puppies. Now, I don't even know what that encompasses. I don't know the definition of that and what that means right now either.
I'm assuming that we have some people that want to speak and everything else. Can you give me a few minutes and let me get with my team? I have them here. Let me look at that aspect of the ordinance.
I'm glad we're taking time to think through it all.
So, yeah, and then I'll come back up and just give me a few minutes to look at it.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, Madam Chair.
And since we have a boatload of cards, this will give everybody a chance to collect themselves. And Commissioner Lober, if you have questions for the attorney, one attorney to the other attorney?
Sure. I
Okay.
mean, how long do you think we should take? 5?
Maybe 10?
10? Okay, perfect.
I mean, last time we said 5, I think we took 15, so let's go 10.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would have sent this all out.
We're going to adjourn for 10 minutes.